We had been married for 10 years when my husband found the love of his life. He said she was a pure soul, that she didn't care about money. I turned to my assistant and said, "Cancel his cards, suspend his medications, change the locks. The love of his life, well, I was going to grant him his wish." I sat in front of my vanity, observing the woman in the mirror. At 35, the corners of my eyes already showed some faint wrinkles. They were the marks of sleepless nights worrying about the company's accounting, my mother-in-law's illness, and my husband's endless research projects. Today, I chose a plum-colored silk dress, a deep yet powerful color, like my current position in the family and in the business world. Today was my 10th wedding anniversary with Ethan. People often say a wife's devotion never goes unrewarded. I had clung to that phrase for a whole decade. From being the pampered daughter of a well-off family, I agreed to marry Ethan, a poor university professor with a heavy family burden. Back then, my parents were vehemently opposed. My mother told me that marrying a poor man wasn't the problem. The problem was marrying into a family that didn't know how to value anything. I was young then. I believed in love, in kindness, and in Ethan's intellect, so I turned a deaf ear to everything. I used all my inheritance and business acumen to build the empire we have today, while simultaneously pulling my husband's entire family out of the mire of poverty. I opened a drawer and took out a luxurious red velvet box. Inside was a Patek Philippe watch I had commissioned from Switzerland 6 months ago. Ethan often complained that his old watch had a worn leather strap and that it didn't look elegant enough to wear for teaching or meeting with partners. I remembered every word he said, every frown. To me, Ethan was not just my husband, but also the intellectual pride I had always revered. I was a businesswoman with the scent of money ingrained in my skin, so I cherished the scholarly and distinguished air of an academic like him. The phone rang. It was my assistant's voice on the other end of the line. "Mrs. Grant, everything is ready at the pub at Boston University. The chef reports that he has prepared the shepherd's pie exactly as you requested, with the taste of the old days." I smiled and replied, "Perfect. Thank you, Carla. I'll be there shortly. Don't let Ethan know. I want it to be a surprise." I put the watch in my purse, my heart pounding like in the early days of our love. Instead of the upscale restaurants with candles and dim lights frequented by high society, I decided to celebrate our anniversary right where it all began, the old university pub. 10 years ago, our wedding reception was held there. We were very poor then, just a few tables with simple food. The bride and groom wore shoes stained with mud because it was pouring rain. But amidst that difficulty and hardship, I would never forget Ethan's gaze, full of gratitude and promises. He took my hand and swore in front of our friends, "Elizabeth, struggle with me now, and when I achieve success, I will repay you 1,000 times over." I engraved that oath in my heart. I didn't need him to repay me with gold and silver. I just needed his unconditional love. I drove my luxury car out of the garage of our house. This house in Brookline was the sweat and tears of my last 10 years. Every brick, every tree in the garden had been cared for by my own hands. I thought of Eleanor, my mother-in-law, who had just escaped death thanks to the kidney I had searched for everywhere, spending millions of dollars to secure the operation. I thought of Jessica, my whimsical and spendthrift sister-in-law, who asked me for money every month to buy designer bags and go partying. I protected them not because I had money to spare, but because I loved Ethan. I wanted him to be able to focus on his work without worrying about basic needs. The streets of Boston were busy at dusk, but my heart felt light. I imagined Ethan's surprised face when he saw me appear at the old pub. He would surely be very moved. He had always been a nostalgic and sentimental man. The car moved through familiar streets, taking me back to the old university campus. The old elm trees were still there, silent witnesses to so many generations of students. I parked in a discreet corner, straightened my dress, and applied a little more red lipstick. I wanted to look radiant to show Ethan that despite the passage of time and financial pressure, his wife still retained her beauty and charm. I got out of the car, and a gentle evening breeze made my silk skirt ripple. A feeling of nervousness gripped my chest. I hadn't told Ethan. I just sent him a message saying I had a business dinner tonight and would be late, that he should eat without me. In reality, I had contacted an old janitor I knew, asking him to open the pub at this hour. With the gift box in my hand, I walked along the moss-covered cobblestone path leading to the pub. In my mind, scenes from our memories replayed. Back then, a $10 plate of shepherd's pie was the biggest luxury Ethan could afford me. We shared every spoonful of gravy. We gave each other the tenderest pieces of meat. How could that impoverished past be so beautiful and meaningful? I couldn't imagine that the place holding the most beautiful memories of my life would today become the tomb of my 10-year marriage. The pub's wooden door, with its peeling paint, was ajar, casting a faint strip of yellow light. I smiled, thinking the janitor had already turned on the light for me, but no, something was wrong. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the familiar black Mercedes parked discreetly behind a hedge of withered hydrangeas. It was the car I had given Ethan last month to celebrate the defense of his doctoral dissertation. Why was his car here? Did he also remember our anniversary and want to surprise me? The thought comforted me a little. Maybe my husband and I were truly in sync. I tiptoed closer, planning to startle him like in our mischievous student days. But as I got closer, the intuition of an experienced woman made my steps heavy. There was no music, no atmosphere of a party in preparation, just a terrifying silence that enveloped everything, broken occasionally by the whistling of the wind through the cracks in the door. I decided not to enter through the main door. I went around the building to the back entrance. It led to the kitchen. I used to sneak this way to give Ethan extra meal vouchers when he ran out of money at the end of the month. The rusty kitchen door was ajar. The musty smell of the old whitewashed walls hit my nose, mixed with an unfamiliar perfume fragrance, so sweet and piercing it was cloying. And then I heard laughter. It wasn't the cheerful laughter of a group of friends, but the coquettish giggles of a young woman, interspersed with the deep, warm voice I had heard for the last 10 years. My husband's voice. "You're terrible. Why did you ask me to meet in this hole-in-the-wall place? It's safer here, more intimate, sweetheart. Besides, this place holds a lot of memories. I want to create new memories with you. Erase all the old, outdated ones." Ethan's words were like a bucket of ice water thrown directly in my face, a cold that chilled me to the bone. I froze, clutching the red velvet box so tightly that my nails dug into my palm, causing a sharp pain. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the knife wound that had just shattered my heart. Erase all the old, outdated ones. It turned out that my 10 years of youth, 10 years of sacrifice, 10 years of sharing sorrows and joys were nothing more to him than old things to be erased. I held my breath and pressed myself against the grease-stained wall, trying to hear every word. I needed to know who this woman was and to what extent my husband, the scholar and model husband, had been corrupted. The darkness of the kitchen corner seemed to swallow me, but it was that same darkness that helped me see the true face of the man I had once revered. A clumsy and cruel play was about to end. I hid behind the swinging door that separated the kitchen from the main dining area of the pub. The narrow gap barely let my gaze through, but it was enough to capture the entire scene inside. Under the yellowish light of an old filament bulb, Ethan was sitting on one of those familiar blue plastic chairs, but he wasn't alone. On his lap was a slender young woman with long, loose black hair. She wore a white uniform shirt and an excessively short skirt, and she was snuggled against my husband's chest. The hands I used to hold every night, the hands I had cared for every scratch, were now stroking another woman's bare back. I felt a tightness in my chest, as if someone were strangling me. The blood rushed to my head, but the rationality of a businesswoman seasoned in 1,000 battles forced me to remain calm. I couldn't break down now. I had to see. I had to hear everything. Ethan, the girl's voice was syrupy and cloying like sugar, but in my ears it sounded as rancid as rotten fish. "The tuition deadline is almost here, and my mother back home is very sick. I don't know how I'm going to manage. I think I'll have to defer the semester." Ethan hugged her tighter. His voice was filled with a compassion and tenderness that he hadn't shown me in a long time. "You silly girl. With me here, why are you worried about money? You just focus on studying. I'll take care of your mother's illness and the tuition. You are a talent. You are my muse. I won't let you be tainted by the dust of the world. But where will you get the money? I heard your wife controls the finances very strictly. "Does she know you're helping me?" At the mention of me, Ethan's voice suddenly changed. There was no more tenderness, but a surprising resentment and contempt. "Don't mention that bitter old woman. You're killing the mood. What does she know, besides money, and more money? All day with her head buried in account books, calculating profits and losses. She's such a materialistic, dry person. Every time she opens her mouth, it's to talk about projects and contracts. Next to her, I feel as suffocated as in a prison. I bit my lip until it bled. Bitter old woman, materialistic, dry. That materialistic money bought the medicine for your mother, the car you drive, the house you live in, and even the doctoral degree you hold. Those dry account books are the only thing that has kept your family from starving and being despised by the world." The girl let out a giggle with a slightly triumphant tone. "Well, she seems very capable to me. Besides, she takes very good care of your family. I heard she even funds scholarships for our university. In fact, I'm receiving a scholarship from her company." Her words were like a lightning bolt that shot through my mind. A scholarship from my company. I narrowed my eyes, trying to get a better look at the girl's face. Under the dim light, her oval face and large, innocent eyes began to look familiar. Laura. It was Laura Pierce, the senior literature student, for whom I myself had signed the decision to grant the scholarship for merit and financial hardship, valued at $15,000 at the beginning of the year. I remembered it clearly because in her file she had written a moving story about her humble family background but her great determination. When I presented her with the award, she took my hand with teary eyes and said, "Thank you, Mrs. Grant. You are the benefactor of my life. I will follow your example to become a successful woman." It turned out she was following my example by stealing my husband. She was using my own money to dress up, go shopping, and then use that false appearance of innocence to seduce her benefactor's husband. The audacity of this situation far exceeded my imagination. Ethan let out a scornful laugh, stroking Laura's hair. "Her money is also my money. Do you think she's so brilliant? Without my moral support, without me handling internal and external relations, how could she earn money so easily? She's just a money-printing machine. But you, Laura, you are the soul, the true love of my life. You are pure, kind. You understand poetry, music, art. You understand the concerns of an intellectual like me. When she comes home, she only smells of money, of expensive, cloying perfumes. It makes me nauseous just smelling it. Nauseous. Those two words echoed in my head. The expensive perfume I wear is because you once said it was elegant. For whom do I work myself to death to earn money?" I looked at the gift box in my hand. The gleaming Patek Philippe seemed to mock me. My sincerity, my 10 years of love, were now being compared by the man I shared my life with to a gold-digging student and trampled on without mercy. The anger inside me didn't erupt like a blazing fire but turned cold and sharp as ice. I felt pity for myself and disgust for the two of them acting out their romantic farce inside. All the affection, all the respect I felt for Ethan had completely vanished in that instant. I took a deep breath, swallowing my tears. The Elizabeth of before, the naive student who believed in a cottage and two hearts, was dead. Now, standing here was Elizabeth Grant, the CEO of the Anchor Group. I would not allow anyone to trample on my pride. I gently placed the gift box on the dusty kitchen counter. I no longer needed it. I fixed my hair, smoothed my dress. I would go in there not to make a jealous scene like a common woman, but to teach them a lesson about the price of betrayal. I strode forward and gave the wooden door a hard kick. The sharp, thunderous sound shattered the intimate atmosphere inside. The noise made the adulterous couple jump. Laura let out a choked cry and pushed Ethan away in a hurry, while clumsily fixing the collar of her unbuttoned shirt. Ethan, for his part, had a face as pale as a ghost, his eyes wide, staring at the door as if he had seen a phantom. I stood there in the doorway, my shadow casting long across the old tiled floor. My gaze was icy, scanning the two of them who trembled like rats in a sewer caught in a spotlight. Elizabeth. Ethan's voice trembled, stuttering, unable to form words. What are you doing here?" I didn't answer immediately. I walked in calmly. The sound of my heels against the tiles was regular and firm, like a judge's gavel about to deliver a sentence. I went straight to the plastic table. I pulled out a chair opposite them and sat down, crossing my legs with the same elegance and confidence as if I were in the boardroom. "Are you very surprised?" I forced a smile I knew was more terrifying than crying. "Isn't today our 10th wedding anniversary? I came to reminisce, and look what I find. A most entertaining play." Laura had already recognized me. Her face was livid, without a drop of blood. She quickly bowed her head, wringing her hands, and timidly hid behind Ethan. "Mrs. Grant, I'm sorry." "Shut up." My voice was a whisper, but with enough authority to silence her. "I haven't given you permission to speak." I turned to Ethan, the man whose tie I had lovingly knotted that very morning before he went to work. Now, seeing his disheveled appearance, sweating profusely with fear, I only felt a profound contempt for his cowardice. "What were you saying a moment ago?" I tilted my head, pretending to think. "Old, bitter, materialistic, dry, who only understands money." "Ethan, for the last 10 years, this old woman has supported your entire family, from food and shelter to your false honor. You say, my money makes you nauseous, but you still accept it punctually every month. The car you drive, the suits you wear, even the underwear you have on, is there anything that wasn't bought with my nauseating money?" Ethan, after the initial panic, seemed to regain some composure. The wounded pride of someone who considers himself an intellectual was awakened. He jumped up, adjusted his clothes, trying to regain his usual air of dignity. "Don't think that just because you have money you can come here and lecture me," Ethan growled, his face flushed. "Were you spying on me? Did you hire someone to follow me? I knew it. Living with you is like being in a prison. You never respect my privacy." I burst out laughing, a bitter laugh that echoed in the empty room. "Privacy? You call having an affair with a student and using your wife's money to support your mistress privacy? Ethan, you're a doctor, you're a university professor, and your logic is worse than a 3-year-old's. I don't need to spy on you. The heavens have eyes, my dear. I came here to give you a surprise, but the surprise you've given me is too big. I can't swallow it." I directed my gaze to Laura, who was still cowering behind Ethan. "And you, Laura Pierce, brilliant student, a model of overcoming adversity," I emphasized each word. "You receive my scholarship, you accept my sponsorship, and you repay me by sleeping with my husband. Is that the morality you've learned in life?" Laura suddenly raised her head, her eyes full of tears, a look that would make any man want to protect her, but that only disgusted me. "Mrs. Grant, don't insult me. Professor Grant and I are together for true love. We have a spiritual connection. I don't need your money. I love him for who he is." "What great true love?" I clapped sarcastically. "You don't need money. And who was just complaining about poverty, asking for tuition money? Who was asking for money to treat her mother back home? Do you take me for a fool? If Ethan were a DoorDash driver, a starving construction worker, would you have a spiritual connection with him? Or did you just notice his professor title and the shiny Mercedes he drives?" Ethan, seeing his little mistress cornered, stepped in to protect her, glaring at me furiously. "Shut up! Don't come here judging Laura with your crass, vulgar attitude. She is 1,000 times purer and holier than you. Look at yourself, always talking about money. Have you ever stopped to understand what I need, what I think? Laura gives me inspiration. She makes me feel like a real man, not like a kept man, which is how I feel next to you." "Kept man." I stood up to face Ethan directly. I wasn't as tall as him, but my aura at that moment made him take a step back. "So you finally admit you're a kept man. Very well. If you're so sick of this suffocating life, so sick of this wife who smells of money, then let's free each other." I looked him straight in the eye, declaring each word firmly. "I will file for divorce tomorrow. You and your true love. Get ready to enjoy a life without the smell of money. Let's see if your noble souls can be eaten." With that said, I turned around and walked away, not deigning to look at the stunned faces I left behind. But just as I reached the door, I saw 2 familiar figures rushing in. It was Eleanor and Jessica, the complete in-law family. The play, it seemed, was not over, but had just begun its most exciting act. Eleanor and Jessica appeared at the door, impeccably dressed and perfumed. They had probably also come to attend the supposed anniversary party I had so carefully prepared. But instead of a congratulatory smile, what they found was the scene of me confronting Ethan and Laura in a powder keg atmosphere. Seeing Laura hidden behind her son, Eleanor's gaze wavered slightly. I knew very well that Laura was no stranger to her. I had once seen a message from Laura asking my mother-in-law about her health in a very familiar way. It turned out they had been seeing each other behind my back. The only fool who had been kept in the dark was me. I looked directly at Eleanor and greeted her with biting irony. "Mom, Jessica, you're just in time. Come in and see the wonderful play your dear son and brother is putting on." Before Eleanor could say anything, Ethan stepped forward, completely changing his tone, adopting the attitude of an aggrieved victim. "Mom, look at her. She came here to make a scene, to insult me and Laura. She thinks that because she has money, she can trample all over this family. I can't take it anymore." Jessica, my sister-in-law, with her garishly bleached blonde hair, shot me a sideways glance and rushed to her brother's side. "Elizabeth, what's all the fuss about? My brother is a university professor, a person with status. Have some respect for his image. If there's a problem, we talk about it at home behind closed doors. Why air our dirty laundry in public?" I laughed, a cold laugh that echoed throughout the room. "Respect for his image. Ask your brother if he cares about his image when he brings his mistress to this very pub to fool around. Look closely. This is Laura, the student I sponsor with a scholarship. Your brother is messing around with the very person who is indebted to his wife. Does that seem very honorable to you?" Eleanor finally entered slowly. She showed neither surprise nor anger towards her son. On the contrary, she looked at me with a reproachful expression, the same look I had received for 10 years whenever I didn't meet her demands. "Elizabeth, as a woman, you have to know how to be patient. It's only natural for a man to have a wandering eye. If Ethan goes out to have a little fun, it's just to release work stress. If, as a wife, you don't know how to keep your husband and let him seek happiness elsewhere, the fault is yours. You can't blame anyone else." I was petrified. My ears were ringing at my mother-in-law's sick logic. I, the devoted daughter-in-law who had sold my own mother's jewelry to pay for her medical treatment. Now, in her eyes, I was just a woman who didn't know how to keep her husband. "How can you say that, Mom?" I retorted in a restrained voice. "I have sacrificed everything for this family, and in return, I receive this blatant betrayal. Who took care of you when you were sick? Who paid Jessica's debts? Where did the money for the big, beautiful house you live in come from?" Eleanor pouted and waved her hand as if shooing an insect. Come on, don't bring up the money to throw it in our faces as if your money is so important. My family, although poor, has principles and values. We value affection, not money like yours. Ethan is a genius, one of a kind. He needs a wife who understands him, with whom he has a connection, who supports him, not a merchant who only knows how to do calculations. Laura, seeing that she had allies, came out from behind Ethan with her eyes full of tears. "Mrs. Grant is right. I love Professor Grant very much. He feels lonely in his own home. Elizabeth, please, let him go. We truly love each other. Please, give us your blessing." I looked at the 3 shameless faces before me. A cheating husband, an ungrateful mother-in-law, and a brazen mistress. They had united against me, using arguments of false morality to attack me. I suddenly realized my mistake. The biggest mistake of my life was not marrying a poor man, but marrying into a family of ingrates. Ethan, encouraged by the support of his mother and mistress, grew even bolder. He pointed his finger at me. "Did you hear that? Everyone sees how irrational you are, only you don't realize it. You always think you're the best, that you're doing my family a favor. I'm sick of your condescending attitude. Laura is the one who understands me, who values my worth as a person. She loves me for being an ordinary man, regardless of fame or fortune. That is true love regardless of fame or fortune." I wanted to laugh in his face. Let's see how long that true love would last if I cut off all financial aid. I took a deep breath, regaining the cold calm of a businesswoman. I didn't need to argue with people who were not on my intellectual level. "All right," I said in a glacial voice. "If you despise my money so much and value affection and nobility so much, I will grant you your wish." I turned to Eleanor and Jessica with a look so sharp it made them shudder. "Mom, Jessica, remember your words today well. Never regret them. And you, Ethan, you say Laura loves you for who you are, regardless of material things, right? Perfect. Hold on to that belief." I picked up my purse, stood tall, and lifted my head. I'm leaving here not as a loser who runs away, but as a queen shaking off the parasites that have attached themselves to her. "We're done here. I'll see you in court." I walked out the door, leaving behind the looks of hatred and Laura's triumphant smile. She thought she had won. She had just stepped into hell without knowing it. As soon as I left the pub, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps behind me. It was Eleanor. She lunged at me, blocking my path, her face flushed with anger. "Stop! Where do you think you're going? You cause all this commotion and just walk away as if nothing happened." I stopped and looked at her with unprecedented coldness. Before, whenever she raised her voice, I would lower my head and apologize to keep the family peace. But today, that patience had died along with my marriage. "Where I'm going is my business. You no longer have any right to question me." Eleanor glared at me and pointed her finger. "How dare you speak to your mother-in-law like that, you spoiled brat? Do you think that because you have money you can do whatever you want? I'll tell you one thing. My son is right to leave you. A woman like you who only knows how to make money, who neglects her husband and doesn't understand the obedience a wife owes her husband, is someone no one would want." Jessica also ran up and joined her mother. "That's right. Look at yourself, old and ugly, always with that bitter face. Laura is young, beautiful, and sweet. It's normal for my brother to fall in love with her. You should look in the mirror and do some self-reflection instead of blaming others." I looked at the two women in front of me with a feeling of absolute contempt. Were these the people I had carefully cared for 10 years? I remembered the sleepless nights in the hospital when Eleanor had heart attacks. I remembered the times Jessica called me crying in the middle of the night because creditors were harassing her, and I had to go pay her debts. I had considered them my family, but it turned out that in their eyes I was nothing more than a cash cow to be milked, an emotionless ATM. "Enough," I shouted with a voice so firm that they both fell silent at once. "You call me old, ugly, materialistic. All right, let's see how many days you can live with your nobility without the money of this old, ugly, materialistic woman." Eleanor pouted disdainfully. "Come on, don't try to scare us. Without your money, my son is still a doctor, a prestigious university professor. His salary is more than enough to support the whole family. Do you think we'll starve without you? Doctor, professor." I let out a bitter laugh. "Do you know how much your son earns as a professor? $4,000. $4,000 a month, ma'am. That amount isn't even enough for you to buy a bottle of your vitamin supplements or for your daughter to buy a dress. Do you think the trips to Europe, the designer clothes, the luxury meals you enjoy come from his salary?" Jessica straightened up and retorted, "Don't lie. My brother has scientific research projects that bring in millions. He told me so himself. Don't try to deceive us. Projects." I shook my head, disgusted by their ignorance. "Those projects are 100% funded by my company. It was I who put up the money to buy him a reputation. Now that I'm withdrawing the funding, the project will be canceled immediately. You'll see." Eleanor seemed to hesitate for a moment, but she still tried to maintain her false pride. "You wouldn't dare. If you do that, you'll be ruining your husband's life. Don't be so cruel." "Cruel?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "Compared to how you treated me today, what I'm about to do is merciful. You chose to side with that tramp, to insult me and trample on my efforts. Don't blame me for being ruthless. I didn't want to waste any more words on them." I turned and walked straight to my car. Eleanor tried to lunge at me to grab me, but I slammed the door shut. Through the soundproof glass, I saw her screaming and insulting, her face distorted with rage. Jessica, beside her, stomped her feet with an expression of frustration. I started the car and accelerated past them as if they were strangers. In the rearview mirror, the images of my in-laws grew smaller until they disappeared. I didn't cry. My tears were too precious to be shed for those who didn't deserve them. The car sped down the highway. I opened the window to let the night wind dry the cold sweat from my forehead. My mind was clearer than ever. The pain had passed, giving way to a cold, precise calculation. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of my faithful assistant. "Carla, it's me, Elizabeth." "Yes, Mrs. Grant, I'm listening. How was the anniversary party? Was Mr. Tappan dated?" Grant surprised. "Immensely." I laughed bitterly. "But we'll talk about that later. Now listen carefully to my instructions and execute them immediately." "Yes, tell me." "I'm listening." Carla's voice turned serious when she noticed the strangeness in my tone. "First, contact the bank immediately and request the blocking of all supplementary credit cards in the names of Ethan Grant, Eleanor Grant, and Jessica Grant. The reason is a request from the primary cardholder. Do it right now. Block all of them." "But isn't Mr. Grant on a business trip?" "No, he's—" Carla was about to ask more, but stopped herself. "Don't ask questions. Block them immediately." "Yes, I'm doing it right now." "Second," I continued in a firm voice, "call the administration of the residential community and ask them to cut off all internet and cable TV services. At the same time, contact the electricity and water companies and request a temporary suspension of service because the owners will be away for a long time. Cut the power and water. But Mrs. Eleanor and Jessica are still in the house." "No, it's not their house anymore. That house is in my name. It is a premarital separate property. What I want to do with it is my right. You just follow my orders." "Yes, ma'am. Understood." Third, immediately draft a statement to withdraw funding for the research project, Application of American Folklore in Modern Life by Dr. Ethan Grant. The reason is a breach of the contractual clause regarding the ethics of the principal investigator. Send this statement to the dean's office at Boston University and a copy to Ethan tomorrow morning. "Mrs. Grant, that's very serious. If we withdraw funding suddenly, Mr. Grant could be sanctioned, even fired." "That's exactly what I want," I said clearly. "He used my money to support his mistress at the university itself, publicly humiliating me. I'm going to take away everything I've given him." There was a silence of a few seconds on the other end of the line, and then Carla's voice sounded full of determination. "Understood, Mrs. Grant. I will execute it immediately. Are you okay?" "I'm perfectly fine, thank you, Carla. Oh, one more thing. Tell me. Contact Mass General Hospital and cancel the appointment for Mrs. Eleanor Grant's kidney transplant next week. Tell them the family has been unable to raise the funds. Request the withdrawal of her file." This time Carla was truly shocked. "Mrs. Grant, that's a matter of life and death. Mrs. Eleanor has been waiting for that kidney every day." I gripped the steering wheel, my eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. "I know. But they trampled on my kindness. They said I only used money to buy affection. Well then, I'll show them that without my money, they can't even keep their lives. Do it." "Yes, I will." I hung up. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. A feeling of satisfaction mixed with bitterness washed over me. I never thought I would become so ruthless, but they themselves had forced me to become this person. I remembered Eleanor's words. "My family, though poor, has principles and values." Principles and values. A mother-in-law who defends her son's infidelity, a sister-in-law who insults her sister-in-law, and an entire family that gangs up on the woman who has supported them. I laughed at those principles. The car entered the luxury complex of Millennium Tower. I didn't go back to the house in Brookline. That place was now contaminated by the breath of traitors. I had a penthouse here that I had bought secretly 2 years ago, intending to use it as a quiet refuge when I was tired. Now it would be my fortress, the place where I would start my new life. I parked in the garage and went up the private elevator. Watching the numbers on the panel rise to the 50th floor, I knew the real battle had just begun. Tonight would be a very long night for them. When their credit cards were declined, when the house went dark from the power cut, when their last hope for life was extinguished, they would understand the price of betrayal. I opened the apartment door, turned on all the lights. The luxurious, quiet, and immaculate space welcomed me. I poured myself a glass of red wine, went out onto the balcony, and looked out over the sparkling city. Tomorrow the storm would break, and I, Elizabeth Grant, would be the one directing it. The first ray of sun of the new day pierced through the thick curtains, illuminating the spacious but cold living room. I had spent a sleepless night. The wine glass in my hand had been empty for a long time, but its bitter taste still lingered on my tongue, mixed with the bitterness in my throat. I got up, went to my office, and turned on the computer. Carla's emails with the reports had arrived at 3 a.m. All my orders had been executed, the supplementary accounts blocked, the funding withdrawal statement drafted and waiting for my electronic signature, the utility cutoff notification sent, and most importantly, the email from Mass General Hospital confirming the cancellation of the surgery. I stared at the words cancellation, confirmation on the screen. The memories of months of desperate searching came back like a slow-motion film. 2 years ago, when Eleanor was diagnosed with end-stage renal failure, the whole family fell apart. Ethan only knew how to cry and lament. Jessica feared that if her mother died, no one would give her more money. Only I took charge of everything. I traveled to Singapore, to other parts of the United States. I contacted the best specialists to find a compatible donor. The money I spent was incalculable, but I never counted it. At that time, I considered her my own mother. I remember the day I found a compatible donor. I cried with joy. I rushed home to break the news. Eleanor hugged me, calling me her savior, the best daughter-in-law in the world. Ethan took my hand, swearing he would be eternally grateful. It turned out it was all just empty words. I clicked the button to approve the document. A soft click, but with the weight of an indirect death sentence. I wasn't killing her. I was just taking away the life that I myself had given her. If she and her family despised my money and my effort, let them use their noble affection and family values to save themselves. I picked up the phone and called my private security team, hired from a prestigious firm. "Mike, it's Elizabeth." "Good morning, Mrs. Grant. How can we help you?" "I want you to send your men to the Brookline house right now. Your mission is to change all the locks and reinstall the security system with fingerprint access. Only I and my children will have access. Do not allow anyone else to enter, not my husband, not my mother-in-law." "Understood, ma'am. And what do we do with their belongings?" "Collect all their personal things, pack them in cardboard boxes, and leave them outside by the gate. As for valuables, like paintings, antiques, vehicles, if they don't have documents proving they are their property, leave them all inside the house. We'll get on it immediately. And the Mercedes with the license plate. That car is in my company's name. Have someone drive it to the company parking lot and impound it. If anyone objects, call the police and let it be resolved according to the law." "Understood. Don't worry." I hung up, feeling a surge of energy coursing through my back. I was no longer the submissive wife. I was the master of the game. I put on a business suit. I applied makeup carefully to hide the dark circles under my eyes. Today, I had another important meeting, a meeting with the most important people in my life, my 2 young children. I drove to the international school where my children, Paul, 10, and Sophia, 8, studied. They were my most precious treasure, the only reason I had hesitated to get a divorce for so long. I was afraid they would miss a father, that they would suffer, but after last night, I realized that letting them live in an environment of falsehood with a hypocritical father and a cruel grandmother was the greatest cruelty of all. I asked for permission at school to pick them up early. Seeing me, they both ran to hug me. "Mom, you came to pick us up so early today." "And Dad?" Paul asked. His intelligent eyes scrutinized me. "Dad's on a work trip, honey. Today, Mom, and you are going for ice cream. And then, Mom has something to tell you." I took them to their favorite ice cream parlor by the Charles River. Watching the children eat ice cream with such innocence broke my heart. How was I going to tell them that their father was a traitor, that their grandmother was an ingrate? No, I didn't want to sow hatred in their young minds. I would give them the choice. "Paul, Sophia," I began softly, "if one day Dad and Mom no longer live together, who would you like to live with?" The children stopped eating and looked at me. Sophia, my sensitive daughter, had teary eyes. "Mom, Dad, did you have a fight?" I don't want you to separate. My friend's parents separated, and she's very sad. I hugged her and stroked her hair. I'm sorry, Sophia. There are some things grown-ups can't solve. Dad and Mom don't get along anymore, but no matter what happens, we will always love you very much. Paul, the older one, was more mature for his age. He put down his ice cream spoon and looked me straight in the eye. I know Dad has someone else. I was stunned. How? How do you know? I see him smiling to himself while texting. Once I asked for his phone to play a game, and I saw a message from a girl calling him my love. Dad had her saved as Laura's student. I was speechless. It turns out that children today are more sensitive and observant than adults think. My son had known for a long time but had kept it to himself. And what do you think about that? I asked with a trembling voice. I hate Dad, Paul said firmly. He never plays with us. He's always busy. When he comes home, he yells at us. Only Mom takes us to school, to play. She helps us with our homework. Dad always lies. He says he's going to a meeting, but I saw him go into a coffee shop with that girl. Sophia added, I want to live with Mom too. Grandma always scolds me and tells me I'm useless, just like my mother. And Aunt Jessica always bothers me and takes my toys. I'm very scared of them. Hearing my children's words, I felt my heart break into 1,000 pieces. I had tried to protect them, but the toxicity of my husband's family had seeped into their souls long ago. Eleanor, Jessica, and Ethan had not only hurt me, but also their own blood. All right. I wiped my tears and smiled with determination. I promise you, from now on, Mom will protect you. No one will ever hurt you again. We'll move to a new house, just the 3 of us, and we'll be very happy. Okay? Yes. They both said in unison and threw themselves into my arms. My biggest worry had vanished. My children had chosen me. They were my motivation, my strength to fight to the end. I left the children with my parents for a few days to have my hands free to sort out the mess at the house. My parents, upon hearing the story, were furious, but they supported my decision. My father told me, You're doing the right thing, daughter. We were wrong to force you to be patient. Now you have to live for yourself and your children. If you need anything, we'll help you. With my family's support and my children as motivation, I felt stronger than ever. I drove back to my penthouse, ready for the grand performance that was about to begin at the Brookline House, 5 p.m. According to the security team's report, Eleanor had returned from playing cards at 4:30. Her habit was to take a taxi to the gate and ring the bell insistently for the housekeeper to come out and open it. But today, the script had changed. Eleanor got out of the car and started ringing the bell nonstop. A minute passed, 2, 5. The heavy wrought iron gate remained closed. No one came out to open it. She started screaming and insulting the staff. Where are you, you useless people? Are you all dead or what? Why aren't you coming out to open the door for your lady? Only silence answered her. The taxi driver began to lose patience and demanded payment. Eleanor rummaged in her purse and took out the supplementary credit card I had given her for her expenses, handing it to the driver. Here you go. Charge it here and get lost. I have to go inside and put these people in their place. The taxi driver swiped the card through the machine. The device emitted a long beep and displayed the message. Transaction declined. The card has an error, ma'am. Give me another one or pay in cash. What do you mean, error? My daughter-in-law just put thousands of dollars on that card. Try it again, Eleanor grumbled. The driver tried again. Same result. He started to get angry. Look, don't mess with me. If you don't have money, have someone from your house come out and pay. Don't waste my time. Eleanor, scared, called Jessica, but her phone was off. She called Ethan. He didn't answer either. In the end, she had to take off the gold ring she was wearing and give it to the taxi driver as payment. Take this for now. I'll buy it back from you tomorrow. How miserable, making such a fuss over a few dollars. The taxi driver took the ring, muttered something, and left, leaving Eleanor stranded in front of the locked gate of the house. She tried to put her finger on the fingerprint sensor. Beep, beep, beep. The red light flashed. Data not found. What the hell? Eleanor pounded on the iron gate. At that moment, Mike, the head of the security team, came out of the guardhouse, which was previously occupied by the old janitor I had fired. "Who are you looking for, ma'am?" "What do you mean, who am I looking for? I'm the owner of this house. Open the gate for me right now. And who are you to be here?" "I'm sorry, ma'am. The owner is Mrs. Elizabeth Grant. Mrs. Grant has given orders not to allow strangers to enter. I ask you to leave." "I'm her mother-in-law. Are you crazy? Call Elizabeth right now. Mrs. Grant is not at home, and according to the list of authorized persons she has provided, your name is not on it. We have packed your belongings and left them in that corner. Please take them with you." Eleanor looked in the direction he was pointing, seeing several cardboard boxes piled up in a corner of the sidewalk. She became enraged and lunged at the security guard, but Mike pushed her away with a slight gesture, causing her to almost fall. "Please, don't make a scene. We are just following orders. If you continue to cause trouble, we will call the police." Eleanor, humiliated, sat on the ground and began to cry and scream. But in this rich neighborhood, with its high walls and gates, no one cared about the scene an old woman was making. At 7 p.m., Jessica returned from partying. She was drunk, and a friend dropped her off at the gate. Seeing her mother sitting dejectedly next to a pile of boxes, Jessica slurred. "Mom, what are you doing sitting there? Why don't you go inside? The mosquitoes are eating me alive." "Go inside? Your dear sister-in-law has thrown us out on the street. She's changed the locks, canceled the cards, and put these thugs at the gate." Jessica sobered up instantly, ran to the gate, and began to pound on it with force. "Elizabeth, come out right now. By what right do you throw us out? This house belongs to my brother." Mike came out again and gave her the same cold explanation. Jessica, furious, took out her phone to call her friends to beat up the guards, but when she turned it on, she received a message from the bank. "Your credit card has been blocked at the request of the primary holder." Then, a message from the bar owner from before. "Honey, your card didn't go through. We've kept your Chanel bag as collateral. Bring us the money tomorrow to get it back." Jessica screamed in despair. She was used to a life of luxury, of spending without control. Now, without a penny in her pocket, alone on the street in the middle of the night, she began to understand the meaning of helplessness. But the biggest blow was yet to come. Eleanor's phone rang. It was from Mass General Hospital. She answered quickly, hoping for good news about the operation. "Hello, doctor. You have the kidney, right?" "Good afternoon, Mrs. Grant. We are calling to inform you of the cancellation of your kidney transplant surgery scheduled for next week." "What? Cancelled? What do you mean, cancelled?" Eleanor's voice trembled. "The financial guarantor of the operation, Mrs. Elizabeth Grant, has submitted a request to withdraw the file and suspend payment of all costs. Therefore, we are forced to cancel the surgery. Please come to the hospital to process the discharge of your outpatient file." The phone fell from Eleanor's hands. She collapsed on the ground, her face as pale as death. Her only hope for life had just been snatched away by me. She clutched her chest, gasping. A heart attack was imminent. Mom, what's wrong with you?" Jessica ran to help her. "She killed me. Elizabeth has canceled the hospital expenses. They're not doing the transplant anymore." Hearing this, Jessica's legs also trembled. Mother and daughter hugged each other, crying inconsolably in the cold night of the rich neighborhood. I was in my penthouse, enjoying a steak and wine dinner when the phone rang. It was Jessica's number. I answered and put it on speaker while I calmly cut a piece of meat. "Tell me, sister-in-law. You bitch." Jessica's scream on the phone was so shrill I had to grimace. "How dare you cancel my mother's operation? Do you want her to die? Open the door right now or I'll kill you." I took a calm sip of wine. "Jessica, dear, watch your language. I haven't killed anyone. I've just stopped giving money. Your mother's life is your and your brother's responsibility, not mine. Why are you blaming me if I'm a stranger? Don't be so cruel. You know perfectly well we don't have money." "Oh, really?" I feigned surprise. "I thought your family had principles and values. That your brother was a doctor, a genius. How is it that he doesn't have money to treat his mother? What have you all been living on all these years? Air or the money of this materialistic old woman? Don't play dumb." Jessica, without arguments, resorted to threats. If you don't open the door and start paying the hospital bills again, I'll call Ethan to come and settle the score with you. He won't leave you alone." "Great," I laughed out loud. I was just waiting for Ethan's call. Call him right now. Tell him to bring his true love to save his mother. Let's see if love can be operated on to transplant a kidney. I hung up and blocked Jessica's number. 5 minutes later, the phone rang. Ethan's number. I knew it. Jessica must have called him crying to tell him everything. "Hello, my love. Are you calling me for something?" I answered with a sweet, sarcastic voice. "Elizabeth, what the hell are you doing?" Ethan shouted, his voice broken with rage. "You dare to throw my mother and sister out on the street? You dare to cut off my mother's medical expenses? Do you have a heart?" "Ethan, calm down," I replied calmly. "Weren't you saying that next to me you felt suffocated like in a prison? I'm freeing you and your family. I'm giving you back your freedom to be independent and take care of each other with your noble love. You should thank me. Don't try to justify it. What you're doing is illegal. That house is community property. You have no right to kick my family out. Community property? Ethan, for someone so smart and well-read, you know so little about the law. That house was left to me by my grandparents before we got married. It's only in my name. Have you forgotten the prenuptial agreement we signed? Assets acquired before marriage are separate property. Who I let live in my house is my decision." Ethan was speechless. He had surely forgotten or wanted to forget the agreement my parents had forced him to sign to protect my assets. "Very well. If you're so ungrateful, don't blame me for being ruthless. Wait, I'm coming over there right now. Come, I'll be waiting for you here. And don't forget to bring your little mistress so she can see how her real man manages when he doesn't have his wife's teat to suckle from." Half an hour later, a taxi with Ethan and Laura screeched to a halt in front of the house's gate. Ethan got out of the car furiously, with Laura following timidly, her face full of worry. I was watching everything through the security camera system connected to my iPad. The picture of his family was pathetic. Eleanor moaning on the ground on a cardboard box. Jessica sitting on the ground with a dirty face. Ethan, disheveled with a wrinkled shirt, lunged at the gate and began to pound on it. "Elizabeth, open the door." "What are you doing hiding in there? Come out and talk to me like a civilized person." I activated the microphone connected to the external speaker at the gate. My voice sounded clear and authoritative. "I'm not there, so don't bother calling. I'm in a very distant place where there is no nauseating smell of betrayal. You want to talk? Perfect. We'll see each other in court tomorrow. Tonight, enjoy the fresh air. You. Ethan, speechless, pointed at the camera. "Oh, by the way," I continued. "Ethan, I assume you've already received the email from the university, right? Your project has run out of funding. You'd better start thinking of an explanation for the dean's office. And you, Laura, your scholarship has also been revoked. This semester's tuition payment is on you." Hearing this, Laura burst into tears. "Ethan, what are we going to do now? I don't have money to pay tuition. My mother back home is waiting for me to send her money." Ethan turned to hug Laura, but in his eyes, there was no longer the confidence and protection of that afternoon, but a deep despair. He looked at his dying mother, his panicking sister, his crying mistress, and the cold, imposing closed gate. For the first time in his life, Dr. Ethan Grant experienced the helplessness of a man who has nothing, and this was just the beginning of the collapse of a clay idol. The next morning, I drove back to the Brookline house. I didn't get out immediately, but stayed watching for a moment. The scene in front of my house looked like a battlefield after a storm. Eleanor lay huddled on a piece of cardboard, covered with Ethan's jacket. Jessica was sitting leaning against the wall with a haggard face. The makeup from the night before had smudged, making her look like a clown. Ethan and Laura were sitting together on the curb, looking exhausted and defeated. They had spent the entire night outdoors, enduring the cold and dew. They were probably still there, hoping I would soften and open the door for them, but they were mistaken. They themselves had killed my compassion long ago. I honked the horn with a long, shrill blast. The sound startled them all. Eleanor scrambled to her feet, rubbing her eyes. Ethan and Laura jumped up, staring at the approaching luxury car. I rolled down the window, took off my sunglasses, and looked at them with glacial coldness. Good morning, everyone. How was the night under the stars? Was it romantic? Like something out of a movie? Ethan lunged at the car, banging on the window. Elizabeth, get out now. How long do you plan to torture us? My mother is dying. I opened the door and got out of the car calmly. The security team immediately surrounded me, preventing Ethan and the others from getting close. I stood in the middle of the driveway, separated from them by the sturdy iron gate, like a queen observing her prisoners. Torture you? I laughed scornfully. I haven't tied your hands and feet. You have legs. You can find a motel or a hotel to stay in. Why do you insist on sticking to my gate like flies? Oh, I remember. You have no money. Blocked cards, no cash. What a tragedy for the wannabe high society. Laura, her voice hoarse from the cold of the night, whimpered, Mrs. Grant, please. If you're angry, take it out on me. But don't make Mrs. Eleanor and Professor Grant suffer. She is very weak. Let her come inside to rest a little. I turned to Laura, who was still trying to play the role of a holy martyr. Shut up. You have no voice or vote here. You say don't make them suffer? It was you who destroyed this family and threw them out on the street. You used my money to buy bags, dresses, to go to spas and make yourself pretty to seduce my husband. And now you come with remorse? I took a thick folder from my purse and threw it through the bars of the gate at their feet. Look, these are your expense statements for the last 6 months, with the supplementary card Ethan secretly opened for you. $3,000 for a Gucci bag, $10,000 for a weekend at a resort, $500 a week at restaurants. In total, almost $40,000. With that, you could have rented a luxury apartment for the whole family for a year. Hearing the figure of $40,000, Eleanor's and Jessica's eyes lit up. They scrambled to pick up the folder. Eleanor, trembling, flipped through the pages of the statements. Her face changed color. You dared to use my son's money to buy designer bags? Eleanor turned to look at Laura with fury. When I asked you for money for medicine, you always made excuses, and he gives you all this money. Jessica also shouted, Tramp! I asked Ethan for $100 for a dress, and he scolded me for being a spendthrift, and you dare to spend money like it's nothing? Laura, scared, backed away, stammering. No, it's not like that, ma'am. It was Professor Grant who bought them for me. I didn't ask him to. Ethan, in the middle, didn't know who to defend. He wanted to protect his mistress, but he feared the wrath of his mother and sister. Mom, Jessica, calm down. Everything has an explanation. Explanation? What explanation is there? I interrupted. Go on, tear each other apart. I just came to give Ethan some news. This morning, my lawyer will file for divorce in court. Since you committed adultery and misappropriated community assets for your mistress, I will demand the division of property that I am entitled to by law. And the bad news for you is that with this evidence, you will leave with empty hands. Ethan looked at me, pale and horrified. You dare? Why wouldn't I dare? Who do you think I am? I am Elizabeth Grant. If I could raise you up, I can also sink you into the mud. Enjoy your last moments as a university professor, because very soon you're going to be very famous. With that said, I turned and entered the house, ordering the guards to close the gate tightly, ignoring the screams and insults of the family I left behind. I entered my beloved house, which from now on would be free of traitors. That same afternoon, Mr. Davies, my legal representative, met with Ethan at a coffee shop near the university to discuss the terms of the divorce. I didn't go. I didn't want to see his face again. I gave Davies full power to resolve it. Ethan arrived at the appointment, looking dejected, his clothes wrinkled and with several days' worth of beard growth. Laura accompanied him. She clung to him like a limpet. Now that she had no one else, he was her only lifeline. Mr. Davies placed a thick folder on the table. Good afternoon, Mr. Grant. I am the attorney for my client, Mrs. Elizabeth Grant. Here is the divorce petition and the property settlement proposal prepared by my client. Please review it. Ethan took the paper with trembling hands. What does she want? My client is requesting a unilateral divorce. As for the children, Mrs. Grant will obtain full custody of both. You will not have to pay child support. As for the assets, the Brookline house and the other 2 apartments are Mrs. Grant's separate property, acquired before the marriage or donated by her parents with documentation to prove it. The Mercedes you drive is also the property of the Anchor Group. Therefore, you are not entitled to any part of these assets. Ethan slammed the table. This is absurd. For 10 years, I also contributed to this family. I worked. I gave her my salary. Why should I leave with empty hands? I want half. That house is worth millions. I'm entitled to half. Laura, beside him, supported him. That's right. Professor Grant has worked very hard for many years. Even if he didn't contribute as much, he made an effort. Mrs. Grant can't be so cruel. Mr. Davies smiled, calmly adjusting his glasses. Mr. Grant, you say you contributed. Allow me to show you this. Davies pulled out a detailed financial chart. In the last 10 years, your total income as a university professor has been approximately $250,000. However, your personal expenses, those of your mother and sister, plus the money Mrs. Grant has invested in your research projects, total more than $2 million. In other words, you owe my client $1,750,000. Mrs. Grant has been very generous in not demanding repayment of this debt. She only asks that you sign the divorce and leave. Ethan looked at the figures that spoke for themselves and began to sweat. He had no idea that I had recorded everything in such detail. But she gave me that money voluntarily, he tried to argue. Indeed, voluntarily, but if you want to take the property settlement to trial, we will make public all the evidence of your adultery. Davies pulled out another stack of photos. Here are photos of you with Miss Pierce in hotels, on trips, hotel bills, plane tickets. If this reaches the university's dean's office and is published on social media, I'm afraid your teaching career will end immediately. You will lose your honor, your job, and your status as a father. Ethan was speechless. He knew how strict the ethical code of the education sector was. If he were fired, he would be left with nothing. His doctoral degree would be nothing more than a joke to everyone. You're blackmailing me, Ethan muttered through clenched teeth. We are not blackmailing you. We are offering you the best option, Davies said coldly. Sign the mutual consent divorce, and you will retain a minimum of dignity without having to carry $1 million debt. Or go to trial, lose everything, and end up in debt up to your eyeballs. You choose. Laura, upon hearing about dismissal and debts, turned pale. She tugged on Ethan's sleeve and whispered, Ethan, honey, sign it. If you lose your job, what will we live on? You're a genius. You're very smart. You'll find another way to make money. We'll start from scratch. We don't need that old woman's money. Sign to save your reputation. Then we'll have a chance to get back on our feet. Laura's words were a boost to Ethan's wounded ego. He believed he was a phoenix that had only temporarily fallen from grace. He was confident that with his superior intellect, he would soon rebuild his career and make me regret it. He picked up the pen but hesitated. The images of the luxurious house, the elegant parties, the gleaming car came back to his mind. Signing meant giving up all of that, going back to renting, to driving a beat-up scooter. What are you waiting for? Davies urged him. My time is limited. Mrs. Grant told me that if you haven't signed by 5 p.m., we will file the unilateral petition and send the file to the university immediately. At that moment, Ethan's phone rang. It was Eleanor. Ethan, son, are you coming? I'm very hungry. I'm very tired. We need to find a place to sleep. I can't take it anymore. Did you get the money from Elizabeth? Ethan looked at Laura and then at the divorce petition. He knew he had no way out. If he didn't sign, he would not only lose his job, but his mother would also not have a roof over her head because he would have no money to rent anything if he were fired. Mom, wait a bit. I'm on it. Ethan hung up and took a deep breath to regain his false composure. All right, I'll sign. I don't need that woman's dirty money. I'll show her that Ethan Grant is not a kept man. I have my intellect, my worth. I'll get rich on my own effort. Laura applauded. That's it, honey. You're amazing. I'm confident you'll succeed. Money is fleeting. Integrity is eternal. Hearing those hollow words, Ethan felt revitalized. He stamped his signature on the divorce petition, a trembling but determined signature that put an end to 10 years of marriage. "It's done. Take it and get out, and tell Elizabeth that I'm giving her her freedom." Mr. Davies checked the signature, smiled with satisfaction, and put away the documents. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Grant. Allow me to add something on a personal note. Missus, Grant sends her thanks to Miss Pierce." Laura was perplexed. "Thank me?" "Yes, Mrs. Grant says that thanks to Miss Pierce's appearance, which has enlightened her about true love, she has found the strength to get rid of a burden she had been dragging for 10 years. She wishes you both to be very happy together in your humble cabin with 2 hearts of gold. Goodbye." Mr. Davies stood up and left, leaving Ethan and Laura standing there. His ironic words were like a slap in the face. Ethan began to realize that the freedom he had just signed for might not be as sweet as he imagined. With the copy of the divorce agreement in hand, Ethan left the coffee shop feeling empty. It started to drizzle. With no car to pick him up, he and Laura had to take shelter under an awning, waiting for a taxi. "Ethan, where do we go now?" Laura asked in a low voice. "First to pick up my mother and Jessica, and then to find a room to rent." "A room to rent?" Laura wrinkled her nose. "Why don't we rent an apartment for now? I'm not used to living in such small places." Ethan turned to his mistress, and for the first time, her demands seemed like a nuisance. "With what money are we going to rent an apartment? Right now, I only have $100 in cash. Do you think they don't ask for a deposit to rent an apartment?" Laura fell silent, not daring to say anything more. Ethan called a taxi, and they went back to pick up his mother and sister. The 4 of them with all their luggage squeezed into the small car. The mix of smells of sweat, Jessica's cheap perfume, and the dampness of their dew-soaked clothes created a suffocating atmosphere. They found a room of about 200 square feet in a lost alley in a rough part of town. It was a damp place, with peeling walls and a bathroom that stank. Eleanor, as soon as she entered, covered her nose. "My God, what is this pigsty, son? How can you bring me to this place? I can't even breathe." Jessica also stomped her feet. "I'm not staying here. This is disgusting. Ethan, do something. You're a doctor and you let your family live in this hole." Ethan threw the suitcases on the floor and shouted in desperation, "Shut up, both of you. Having a roof over our heads is a blessing. We have no money. We have no house. What more do you want? If you want luxury, go back and beg Elizabeth." Hearing my name, the 3 women fell silent. They knew that door was closed forever. That night, in the cramped room, the 4 of them slept, squeezed together on an old mattress on the floor. Eleanor complained of back pain. Jessica cried for her comfortable bed, and Laura turned to the wall, sobbing. Ethan, with his eyes open, stared at the stained ceiling. He touched the copy of the divorce agreement in his shirt pocket. His signature was still there, the black ink like a scar. He had signed it with the pride of a man whose ego was wounded, believing he would rise again stronger. But now, faced with the harsh reality of day-to-day life, that pride was useless for putting food on the table. His stomach rumbled with hunger. He hadn't eaten all day. He remembered the sumptuous meals prepared by the private chef at the house, the vintage wine, the soft bed with clean-smelling sheets. It had all vanished like a soap bubble. And what was worse, he began to realize that tomorrow, when the sun rose, the real struggle for survival would begin. How was he going to face his colleagues at the university when the news spread? Where was he going to get the money to feed 3 more mouths when this month's salary was already almost gone on advances? My revenge was not to hit them or insult them. My revenge was to let them taste the poverty they had so despised, to let them devour each other in the quagmire they had created for themselves. I, sitting in my luxurious penthouse, sipping a hot chamomile tea, smiled as I watched the drizzle fall outside the window. I had won. A victory without weapons, but devastating. The next morning, I received a call from the police station. Ethan had gone to report me for embezzlement and for illegally kicking them out of the house. I smiled. I had expected that move. I went to the station with all the documentation. The property deed in my name, the notarized prenuptial agreement, the documents proving my separate property, and the security camera recording from the previous night, which showed them disturbing the peace. In front of the officers, Ethan maintained his false appearance of dignity, talking nonstop. "Officers, look at how my own wife treats me. She threw my 70-year-old mother out on the street in the middle of the night, in the cold and damp. This behavior is a serious ethical breach." The officer looked at Ethan and then at the file I had given him and said coldly, "Mr. Grant, legally, the house is the exclusive property of Mrs. Grant. She has every right to decide who lives in it and who does not. As for your marital relationship, you are in the process of divorce, and you have already signed the mutual consent agreement. The fact that you brought your mother and sister to cause a disturbance in front of someone else's property is what constitutes a disturbance of the peace." Ethan was speechless, his face red with shame. But she kept all our things. You're mistaken, Ethan," I intervened calmly. "I carefully packed your personal belongings and left them outside the gate. It was you who didn't want to take them and stayed there making a scene. As for the valuables, like paintings, antiques, vehicles, do you have any invoice or document in your name?" Ethan stammered. That was bought during the marriage." "And with whose money?" I asked him. "Everything was paid from my bank account with invoices issued in my company's name for accounting purposes. Do you want me to show you the statements?" Ethan fell silent. He knew he had no case. In the end, he had to sign a statement promising not to disturb the peace again and left with his tail between his legs. Upon returning to the miserable rented room, Ethan found an even more depressing scene. Eleanor was moaning on the floor, in pain and hungry. Jessica was rummaging through some black trash bags containing the clothes I had returned to them. "Where is my mink coat and my Hermes bag?" Jessica shouted. "Why is there only old clothes?" I had given instructions to pack only their oldest and cheapest clothes. The luxury items they had bought with my money, I had kept them all to donate to charity. It wasn't about the money, but because I didn't want them to use anything I had given them. "Enough!" Ethan shouted at his sister. "Stop complaining. I just came from the police station. We lost. The house is hers. The things are hers. We're not getting anything back." Hearing this, the three women collapsed. Their last hope of returning to the house to loot it had vanished. The bad news kept coming. That same afternoon, Ethan received a call from the university's dean's office asking him to attend a meeting. He hastily put on the only suit he had left, trying to fix his hair to maintain a minimum of dignity. In the dean's office, the tension was palpable. The dean placed the statement from my company withdrawing funding on the table. "Mr. Grant, the Anchor Group has officially announced the withdrawal of all funding for your research project. The reason they cite is a lack of ethics during the collaboration. Can you explain this?" Ethan, sweating profusely, tried to justify himself. "Mr. Dean, this is a personal misunderstanding between my wife and me. She's angry and just trying to make things difficult for me. I'll talk to her to convince her." "It's not just that," the dean interrupted him, pushing a stack of photos towards him. "The university has received an anonymous complaint with this evidence. You are maintaining an inappropriate relationship with the student Laura Pierce and have used project funds for personal expenses. The rumor has already spread among the students, seriously affecting the university's reputation." Ethan looked at the photos of him and Laura embracing in a hotel and turned pale as a ghost. He knew the anonymous complaint was my doing. "Mr. Grant, according to the regulations, the university has decided to suspend you from your teaching duties while an investigation is conducted. Furthermore, as the project has been canceled, you must return the $25,000 advance you were granted. If you do not return it, we will refer the case to the competent authorities." Ethan left the dean's office stumbling as if his soul had been ripped out, suspended from work, with a $25,000 debt, and without honor. Arriving at the university courtyard, he saw his Mercedes parked. He went to open the door out of habit, but a man stopped him. "Excuse me, you can't touch this car. It's my car." "Who are you?" "I am an agent of the Anchor Group. This car is the property of the company, and Mr. Grant's permission to use it has been revoked. Please step aside." The man snatched the keys from his hand, started the car, and drove away. In front of hundreds of students leaving class, they began to point at him and whisper, "Look, they've taken Professor Grant's car. They say he was fooling around with that Laura from an upper year. His wife left him, and now he's broke." Wow. and I thought he was rich. Turns out he was a kept man. The comments were like thousands of needles stabbing into Ethan's pride. He stood paralyzed in the middle of the courtyard, feeling a humiliation he had never experienced before. The image of a genius and distinguished professor he had worked so hard to build had completely collapsed. He looked at the message he had just received on his phone. Paycheck deposited, $950. That was the true value of the genius Ethan Grant without my backing. That amount wasn't even enough to buy a bottle of the wine he used to drink. June. Boston was burning under a scorching sun. The temperature outside reached 100 degrees. In the rented room, a ground-floor unit with a tin roof, the air was dense and suffocating like an oven. The old fan creaked, spreading hot air that only increased the feeling of oppression. Eleanor lay on the mattress, sweating and moaning. Her kidney disease had worsened. Her body was swollen and sore, but without money for expensive medications, she only dared to take cheap painkillers from the corner pharmacy. "It's so hot. I'm so thirsty." "Where is that, Laura?" "Get me a glass of water," Eleanor shouted. Laura, sitting in a corner doing her nails, replied with annoyance, "Get it yourself. I'm exhausted too. Pregnant women are usually pampered, and here I am, stuck in this pigsty and having to serve an old woman." Hearing this, Jessica jumped up and grabbed her by the hair. "What did you say? Who are you calling an old woman? She's your husband's mother, you ungrateful witch. If you don't serve her, who will? You're nothing but a maid, a burden to this family." The two women got into a fight. Ethan, who had just arrived exhausted from work, saw the scene and shouted, "I've had it! Shut up, both of you! Don't we have enough problems already without you two fighting?" Since he was suspended from work, Ethan had tried to give private lessons, but with his reputation in tatters, no parent would trust their children to him. He had to hide his doctoral degree and start working as a DoorDash driver to earn some money. He threw his helmet on the floor and sat down, breathless. "How much did you make today?" Jessica asked, her eyes shining. $20. "I spent $5 on gas and $3 on food, so there are $12 left." "Just that?" Jessica pouted. "That's not even enough to buy vegetables. Ethan, you have to do something. I don't even have money for feminine products anymore." "And where do you want me to get the money from?" Ethan snapped back. "You have hands and legs. Get a job, or are you going to lie around all day waiting for a handout?" Jessica, offended, left. She was used to a life of luxury. The idea of washing dishes or working as a sales clerk wounded her pride. She tried to borrow money from her friends, but they all avoided her, knowing her family was broke. Eleanor, from the bed, saw her emaciated and dirty son, her lazy and ill-mannered fake daughter-in-law, and tears welled up in her eyes. She remembered the hot oatmeal I used to prepare for her every morning. She remembered my hands massaging her legs when they ached. She regretted it, but her late regret was useless. Life in the cramped, deprived room had turned the people who once believed themselves noble and distinguished into miserable, ill-tempered, and cruel beings to each other. Hell on earth. The more desperate they became, the more conflicts arose. Laura, Ethan's true love, began to show her true colors. She was no longer the sweet and innocent student. Poverty had torn off her mask of false morality. She criticized Ethan for being useless, compared him to other rich men she had known. "I must have been blind to have fallen for you," Laura snapped during a dinner of white rice and green beans. "I thought you were a great doctor, but it turns out you're just a miserable delivery driver. I might as well have hooked up with the corner baker. At least he has his own house." Ethan threw his plate on the floor, shattering it. "Shut your mouth. When I had money and a luxury car, you stuck to me like a leech. Now that I'm broke, you turn your back on me? A gold digger like you isn't worth 2 cents. Eleanor and Jessica took the opportunity to join the attack. "Get out. We don't want tramps like you in this house. You're a jinx. You've brought ruin to my family," Eleanor shouted, throwing a pillow at her face. Laura didn't back down. She stood up and pushed Eleanor. "Shut up, you old hag. I've put up with you long enough. You think you're still the lady of the house? Now you're just a burden to this family." Seeing her mother being pushed, Jessica lunged at Laura, grabbing her by the hair and slapping her. "You dare touch my mother? I'll kill you." The three women rolled around on the floor of the cramped room. Ethan watched them, helpless and disgusted. He didn't intervene. He even felt a strange, twisted satisfaction. He wanted Laura to suffer, to pay for having deceived him, although in reality he was a liar too. That night, Laura left. She packed her clothes, which were no longer many or in good condition, and disappeared into the rainy night. Ethan sighed with relief, believing he had gotten rid of a burden, but he was mistaken. Laura hadn't left alone. She carried a ticking time bomb in her womb. 2 weeks later, Laura returned. She was thinner, haggard, with deep dark circles under her eyes. She stood at the door of the room with a crumpled ultrasound in her hand. "Ethan, I'm pregnant. It's yours." Ethan, who was fixing a flat tire on his scooter, received the news like a lightning bolt. Pregnant. Now, when he could barely support himself and his mother. "You're lying. How do you know it's mine?" "With how promiscuous you are, who knows how many you've slept with," he rejected her cruelly. Laura, crying, knelt at his feet. "I swear I've only been with you. If you don't believe me, wait until it's born and we'll do a DNA test. Honey, our child is not to blame. Marry me. Let's start over. I'll work. I won't complain anymore." Eleanor, who had heard everything from inside, dragged herself to the door and pointed at her. "Marry you? You're trying to use that pregnancy to tie down my son? In your dreams. My family will never accept a daughter-in-law like you." Ethan looked at Laura coldly. "Get an abortion." "What?" Laura couldn't believe it. "I said, get an abortion. I don't have money to support it. Do you want it to be born to starve to death? Go and get an abortion. I'll give you $20. Ethan's cruelty was the final stab that ended all of Laura's hopes. She looked at the man she had once idolized, with whom she had dreamed of starting a family, and who now revealed himself as a heartless monster. "You're not human!" Laura screamed, lunging at him to scratch him. Jessica, seeing her brother being attacked, grabbed the mop handle and hit Laura hard in the stomach. "Let go of my brother, you psycho." The blow made Laura fall, hitting her abdomen against the hard concrete floor. She let out a cry of pain and writhed, clutching her belly. A trickle of blood began to flow from between her legs, staining the dirty floor. "Blood! My baby!" Laura whispered, her face pale. Ethan and Jessica stood paralyzed, staring at the pool of blood. Eleanor fainted from the shock. No one dared to take Laura to the hospital because they had no money. They stood there, watching as life left the little creature that had not yet been born. When the neighbors heard the screams and took her to the emergency room, it was already too late. The baby could not be saved. Laura lost a lot of blood and went into a state of psychotic shock. After leaving the hospital, Laura went mad. She constantly muttered about the child she had lost, about the house, about eternal love. She loitered around the room, harassing Ethan's family. One afternoon of torrential rain, she snuck into the room while Ethan was sleeping soundly, exhausted after a long day of work. Eleanor was delirious in bed, and Jessica was not there. Laura, with a fruit-peeling knife in her hand, approached Ethan. In her delirium, she whispered, "Ethan, honey, let's go. Let's go to paradise. There's no poverty there, no old wife. We'll live happily ever after with our child." Ethan woke up with a start, and, seeing Laura with the knife at his neck, he jumped up and ran. He ran out of the room and up to the roof of the small apartment building. Laura chased him closely, her eyes bloodshot and with a demented smile. "Where are you going? You promised we'd be together forever." Reaching the 5th-floor rooftop, Ethan found himself cornered. Behind him was only a low railing, and below, the cold asphalt. "Laura, calm down." "Let's talk," Ethan pleaded. Laura didn't listen. She lunged at him and hugged him tightly. The impact, combined with the slippery floor due to the rain, caused them both to lose their balance. Ethan slipped and fell backward over the railing. Laura clung to him like a death hug from which he could not escape. "Ah!" A heart-wrenching scream broke the silence of the rain. They both fell from the 5th floor. Splat! Everything went silent. Their blood mixed with the rainwater, spreading across the street. The end of a guilty love, the end of blind ambitions, and a despicable betrayal. Eleanor, upon learning of her son's death, suffered a stroke and died on the way to the hospital. Jessica, After organizing the funeral for her mother and brother with money donated by the neighbors and terrified by the enormous debts Ethan had left behind, fled the country and was never heard from again. 3 years later, I am on the balcony of my new oceanfront house in Santa Barbara, breathing the pure air. The sea breeze rustles my hair, now short and in a bold style. After all that, I sold the house in Boston, full of painful memories. I moved with my 2 children to Santa Barbara to start a new life. My business prospered. I expanded my chain of restaurants across the country, becoming one of the most successful businesswomen. Paul and Sophia have grown up. They are good students and very understanding. They never mention their father as a way to protect me from bad memories. I take a sip of chamomile tea, watching my children play on the white sand. I feel an incredible peace. I have weathered the storm. I have had my revenge, and I have learned to let go. Now I live for myself, radiant and proud, like a sunflower that always faces the sun. The past is closed. The traitors paid the highest price for their choices, and I, the once devoted wife, have found the true value of my life: freedom,